Elliot, how are you, sir?
Good. How are you? It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Yeah. We have been planning this for months.
We have.
And I'm so pumped. Today we are eating slow cooked bison tacos. And it's not just bison tacos. This is Buffalo Hump roast. And I've been smelling for the last 20 minutes getting set up here. I'm so pumped. Talk to me about bison.
So bison is great. Bison's this wonderful protein. I really love it. We talked about it a lot when we were here last. But this particular product is from Brown's Buffalo Ranch. They're out of Nissa, Oregon. They've been there for 30 years, right? So they're right down the road from us. The bison is this great, flavorful, lean meat. It's really high in protein. It's really good in your cholesterol.
I can't stay at this anymore. Keep talking.
Go
start
for it.
making a taco.
It's fantastic. What I really love about the bison is it's super versatile and it can be used for just about anything that you're using beef for. The hump roast is one of the fattier portions of the bison. It's got this really nice fat cap. It's almost brisket-like in its kind of texture and composition, which makes it shred super easily. And when I was going out and I'm like, what am I going to do? It's winter for a hump roast. And the first thing that came to my mind was birria tacos. They're in the zeitgeist, right? They were the hit this summer.
And tacos in general, like the call me pretty and feed me taco shirts that I see chicks at the gym wear. Right. It's like, what is that? And like out of nowhere street, like when I was a kid, and I presume when you were a kid,
right?
Like I remember, look, I did not come from like a very, what would I say, sophisticated culinary background. Right. So you go to Taco Bell or Jack in the Box. Right. Like I remember the birth of the soft taco, and it wasn't street tacos. It was soft taco. I'm like, I'm not about that life. You know, like I want a little crunch to my taco. And then as like I moved through college, like in the early 2000s, all of a sudden people started talking about like, oh, street tacos. I'm like, what's a street taco? They're like, oh, it's just a soft taco, right? Like that's just it. And then all of a sudden there was this mass transition to like, get your crummy, poorly made, crunchy taco shells out of here and give me like a double rack soft taco, like street taco. And that became the thing.
Absolutely did. And
look at this. Keep going.
That looks
I'm going to go
fantastic.
hard on it. Keep going.
The birria taco, the quesadilla, is you see it on a lot of menus, really hit last year, right? So street food's been having its moment for a while, right? We've seen a lot of trucks, restaurants in general, like during COVID, especially, a lot of people pivoted. Quesadilla birria in general, birria is really just a traditional stew. It's a Mexican shredded meat stew. You could eat this on a bowl of rice, in a bowl, throw some lime, some cilantro on it. Or quesadilla, for instance, you take your tortilla, you dip it in the sauce, you fry it, you make essentially a quesadilla taco. It's fantastic.
That was the best bite of taco I've had in so long. Like I just hope I'm not covered in red sauce like a vampire.
Right. It does,
oh my gosh.
like my fingers are stained red from making this, but it's a fantastic dish. It uses a ton of dried chilies, and you're rehydrating and blending them.
Bro, are you Mexican? Like, how did you find this recipe?
So
I culturally appropriate, Elliot?
Oh, never would I. So my mom's family was Portuguese.
Okay.
They're from Santa Maria. We grew up eating a lot of Latin flavors, a lot of Mexican food, tacos, whatever. Chili verde was actually one of my favorites growing up. Kind of similar. We would make chili verde and then we'd make tacos out of it or whatever. My great grandpa had this great recipe for it. So I went and dug through my mom's stuff, found some old recipes that were birria or birria adjacent, kind of looked at some other things that were out there and got what is,
essentially the core of the recipe.
Gotcha. And then kind of adjusted for taste. I used the main chili, and this is the Guajillo chili. I used about 12 Guajillo pods. The Guajillo pepper is like this really earthy, like great pepper. It's similar almost to like gochujang in Korea, like the Korean pepper. But it gives you this really nice earthy flavor. It doesn't have a ton of spice to it.
Yeah, I can taste that because it has flavor, but I'm not burning to death.
No.
And you have this like really full lower end of the palate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
I don't have great vocabulary for describing, but like when you say earthy, I think like lower, like instead of the high spike, the peak.
Yeah, earthy is going to be that kind of man, I guess it's like umami, right? How do you describe umami? You don't. An earthy chili is going to be that kind of mellow flavor, that real kind of down grounded flavor, right? Yeah, it is.
We're on the same page. Okay, so yeah, give me the full walkthrough on how you do this, if you don't mind.
So we start with our hump roast. We could also use a beef chuck roast. So we started with just shy of a 4-pound hump roast here. Did a little bit of trimming. I took out some of the larger kind of chunks of fat and I rendered those in the pan with some olive oil while I was trimming the rest of it. We take it down to chunks, sear the meat on all sides, kind of set it aside. You can do it in a pot on the stove is what I did. You can do it in a slow cooker. You just have to sear it before you go into the slow cooker. You can do it in an Instapot with the sear setting. Easy to do. Once the meat's done, or while the meat's being done, right, you take your all of your chilies, your tomatoes, your onions. So I used, like I said, Guajillo chili, some chili California, some chili negro, and some arbol chilies. And the arbol's really just for spice. Like that's seed in. I did like 4 or 5 of them in here. It's not super spicy. You go 2 for the kids and like 6 or 7 for, the guys that like it hot.
Sure.
But take all of that, 2 tomatoes, an onion, a sweet onion. Like I like using little sweet onions from like Owyhee Produce.
Shout out Owyhee Produce. I've been trying to get them on my show. I have not been able to get them to respond to my Instagram outreaches. Do you know these guys?
I don't, but I mean, like,
how dare you? Owyhee Produce, like, holla, come on.
I probably know somebody who does. Like, I can ask around. But I really like using sweet onions instead of like yellow or whites. So I threw those in. Mexican cinnamon. Have you ever seen the Mexican cinnamon sticks?
No.
Sometimes it's called Ceylon cinnamon, but it looks almost like a cinnamon stick that's been inflated. They're really like brittle and crunchy. And they're not like that tight, compact roll.
These are called churros.
I mean, essentially, it does look like a churro. The reason you want to use the Mexican cinnamon is we take all of those ingredients, we're going to throw them into a pot and boil them, and then we're going to blend them together.
Gotcha.
Boiled out all of our chilies for about 10 minutes, took them out of the water, added in, I did some beef bone broth. You can just use regular beef broth, whatever you've got on hand. Some, cumin, oregano, clove, kind of traditional spices, a cup of apple cider vinegar, because vinegar really brings that heat kind of to the front and lets you taste the full range of those peppers.
Yeah, I did a giant pot of carnitas the other day, and then so the way I do my carnitas is I usually I season everything, chop it all up. Right, in a pan, garlic and spices. I brown my big chunks, right? I make like fist-sized chunks. Brown everything, sear it all up, and then I do a slow cook with it, obviously, right? And then what I do from there is, because I have to be really particular with how I'm doing it. And so sometimes I'll take the big, fist-sized chunks and put them on a cookie sheet and brown them in the oven. But what I've been doing recently, because that will get like a nice crisp on the outside, but it's not going to get a crisp on every bite. So what I've been doing recently is I have a big double burner skillet. And so I just get that just nice low heat and I shred and dump all the stuff on. And then I just keep moving it around. And by the end, and then, I'll scoot everything to one side of it, put all the tortillas on one side and let them get heated up. And as I'm making it, I keep reloading the tortillas. But as you're working through the carnitas that's closest to the skillet, you get this like crunch.
Just that is crispy.
And it's the trick is getting a scoop, like a portion of the scoop that's closest to the skillet. So it's super crispy, almost like, come on, pork rinds. What are they?
Chicharron.
Chicharron. There it is. It's almost like you're eating shredded chicharron, and then you get the juicy on top that still has a lot of moisture in it. So each bite, you get this like crunch and this savory juice. Oh, baby. Like it is fantastic.
And I just tapped the mic, so we're gonna like let it reverb. We're not restarting.
Yeah, there we go.
So you get all those ingredients. We blend them down, and then we're gonna do basically the same thing. And we're gonna stew it first, and then we're gonna do basically the same thing to do our quesadilla if we're gonna do that. But we blend that down. Strain all of your solids out.
Yeah.
I didn't actually have a strainer. Like I wasn't about to go buy a mesh strainer, right? So I used a wire fryer basket that I have, which very thankful for, because I don't know how many years I've looked at that fryer basket and said, this is so in the way of everything. Like, it's the worst kitchen tool. I use it like 2 times a year, maybe. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect, right? So I strained through there, came out fantastic.
I gotta tell you one more story real fast.
Go for
it. Fryer basket, okay?
Yeah.
So my dad, I'm in 6th grade because my sister's in 7th grade. I remember this like it was yesterday. It's stained on my core. My dad gets an at-home deep fryer, and countertop appliances were really hot in the 90s. They've been hot forever, but this one particular one had an in-home fryer, and it looked like a rice cooker. So the lid came up, you had a frying basket, you'd put stuff in it, and then it would lower the frying basket down and then raise it back up when it was done, right? And I was like, I'm in 6th grade, so I don't really know anything of it. He's like, oh, we're making it wasn't halibut. It was like some fried fish that night. And so he made, this batter himself and, puts all the fish in and we fry this stuff. I'm like, oh, this is, great. Like, I don't care. I'm like, this is delicious, right? So my sister goes to school the next day. She's in 7th grade. And her friend is like, hey, you smell funny. She was like, what do you mean? And another friend of her came over and she leaned in and she's like, oh, you smell funny. So my poor 7th grade sister, she's like 12.
Right.
She has to go to the office. She goes up and she's like, I need to go home right now. And the lady in the office is like, oh, are you all right? Like, what's going on? She's like, I need to leave right
Time to go.
now.
I had no explanation.
She got bleach and ran it through her hair. We had to just scrub it. I of course, as a 6th grade Matt, didn't notice anything, and nobody said I smelled because who cares, right? But it's always been one of those things. So I really like doing beer battered halibut. And it's always one of those things where I'm so horrified that I'm going to make some deep fry stank in the house. I have to it could be it could be tomorrow,
right?
Snowing outside. I'm open all the windows and turn on the fan.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing this morning because I started cooking. My wife, the baby are still asleep. This took about 3 hours in total.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
It's not bad at all. But I started cooking this morning and I'm boiling out these peppers and blending garlic, whole cloves of garlic and all of this stuff, and then boiling it on the pot. I'm like, oh, I need to open everything up because the whole house smells like chili right now.
It's the first snow of winter.
Right. Yeah.
Open all the windows.
Open all the doors. Open all the windows. Turn the fan on so it doesn't wake everybody up.
Okay. So I interrupt you. No, your fryer basket. You drain out all the solids.
All the solids. Fantastic. We go with just the juices left into our pot with our meat. We put that on high to get it to boil and then drop it down to low. Let it simmer. Like I said, 2.5, 3 hours. I think this one only took about 2. The bison cooks a little faster than beef, so that's another great quality that bison has, in addition to being better for you and delicious. It cooks faster, so really I think about 2 hours. This was fork tender. I pulled it out, shredded it, back into the pot with the consomme, stir it up, and we're eating it now. Now, if you were going to make quesadilla or enchiladas or anything like that, you just take your tortillas. I like corn. We've got some flour too. Dip them in the juice, throw them on your pan and fry them, throw some cheese and meat on there, fold it over for your quesadilla tacos, or
bowl,
roll it into an enchilada or whatever, right? It's just a really versatile thing, like a beef stew, right? You remember grandma made beef stew and you'd sit in the fridge for a week and you'd be eating beef stew, this and a casserole and a this and a that.
Yeah.
This can sit in your fridge for days, and every day you could have a different meal using this meat. Last night I made homemade pizzas, just little simple pizza doughs, and I threw this on one of my pizzas instead of sauce and meat, and it was just birria and cheese. It's fantastic.
Oh my god! I feel like there are definitely certain dishes in American cuisine that are like the leftover dish, like the casserole, right? It's like, dude, whatever's in the fridge, throw it in there, put it in the oven, call it a day. And I feel like pretty much every culture has that equivalent of okay, what are we going to do on day 2? Use 2, use 3, use 4. And I have been doing a lot of enchiladas lately, and it seems to me it's like, oh, this is the play. Like you got leftover shredded chicken, you got leftover chicken in general. You don't have chicken. You have like some refried beans and cheese, like, and you just roll it up, throw it in there, cover it in sauce and cheese, and it's like the Mexican casserole.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. An enchilada is a casserole. My go-to for leftovers, no matter what they are, it doesn't matter. I do a grilled burrito. Like, without fail, I've got Chinese food, I've got Korean, I've got, whatever it may be. Wait. I've got, go ahead.
Elliot, where are you getting the Chinese?
Oh, my favorite Chinese restaurant, not a plug, this is not paid, Red Pavilion in Meridian. They also have one in Mountain Home. Is fantastic. Like, it's really, really good.
I have been on a hot pursuit for Mongolian beef in the state of Idaho since the day I moved here.
Yeah. Their Mongol beef is fantastic.
Red Pavilion.
Red Pavilion.
In Meridian.
In Meridian.
Don't play with my emotions.
Red Pavilion.
For real.
Meridian. Not a plug, not paid advertising, is the only place I order Chinese food.
Coming for you, Red Pavilion. Oh, where is it? Off of Eagle? Is it in the village?
It's off of Eagle. It's actually on my side of the freeway. Like you get off, like you're going to go to Kuna. Okay. It's right there by like, the curb is right there. And there's like a dry cleaners, a Jiffy Lube, right? It's just right off the freeway.
Best Chinese right next to Jiffy Lube. Got it. Okay, so as you were saying,
so no matter what I've got
with Chinese food,
I'm going to throw rice in there, some spices, some whatever, roll it up in a tortilla and grill it. Grilled burrito is the absolute end all be all, no matter what I have. Biscuits and gravy, grilled burrito, eggs, right? Obviously, on a fried egg. Burrito, like egg everything.
Because that's the thing. The fried rice, like, it's like you threw an egg in there and day old rice, and then whatever else you had in the kitchen. Like that's the Chinese casserole.
It is. Oh, it absolutely is. And I found, especially not necessarily Chinese food, but Korean food, which has draws a lot of the similar flavors.
Yeah.
There was this huge, it was probably like 2012, 2013. And on the East Coast, there's a larger Korean population. So we got more Korean food when I was over there. And then I went to South Korea. But there was this huge like uptick in Korea, not just like Korean barbecue places, but like Korean fusion restaurants. And there's this one, it was actually a Mexican restaurant in Seoul, South Korea. And I can't for the life of me remember it, but it's literally going to be the Mexican restaurant in Seoul. If it's still there. And that was like 2015 last time I was there. But it was a guy that was in the service. He was in Marines or Navy or whatever. He loved Korea, loved the food, came back to LA, started a taco, like a fusion food truck with his brother, and then went back to Korea and opened a Mexican restaurant. And it was literally like Korean food in a Mexican serving. And it was delicious. There was like apple slaw. A lot of this flavor, that earthy Guajillo flavor is the same as, like I said, it's the same as that gochujang. So he could play and mix and match these flavors and make the most delicious burritos and tacos and like a guacamole with, whatever seasonal Korean fruit in there, right?
Listen, eat the rest of your bite. I got a thing for you. I am really excited. 2025. I feel like we have moved past a number of things, but one of them that I'm so excited to be going with is cultural appropriation. Like, because this had a hot minute in like the teens, and then I feel like it started to lose steam in the early 20s. But you mentioned opening a restaurant. So check this out. Do you recall the story of the two ladies who opened the taco truck, taco restaurant in Portland? It was like 15 years ago.
Oh, it would have been a little before my
time. Okay. I read about this. Yeah. It was like 10, 15 years ago. It was in Portland. Okay. So these gals, they're like way into food. Okay. So they go down to Mexico and they're like, oh my gosh, these are the best tacos ever. Like, this is incredible food. And they go up to the counter and they're like, hey, can we talk to your chef? And they're like, no, ladies, get out of here. And they're like, no, but like, what did you put in there? Like, shoo, right? So these gals are like, dude, this is really good food. Like, I don't want to leave without knowing how to cook this. So they go around back to like the cinder block restaurant where it's like the grandma, like the lady making the tortillas. Like that's when you know you've hit a real spot, when they have the grandma there like
absolutely,
and they're like knobby hands, and they're just like my grandma, like a million years old, just so they go around back and they peer through. This is their story, right? They say they peer through the back and see the secret like seasonings and like methods, and the old grandma, pushing through the tortillas. And they go back to Portland. They open up, I think it was like a taco truck. Okay. And they open up, and instantaneously, it's this like massive major hit. People were like, oh my God, these are the best tacos ever, because Portland is very like, it was like the foodie place, right?
Yeah.
Big time. So they get this prominent notoriety, and like, they're like, where did you learn how to make these tacos? And they're like, oh my gosh, these are authentic because this is our story. And they say like the asking, and then they go around peering through the windows. And then of course, people get a hold of that. They're like, wait a minute. You stole the secret recipe from the million-year-old Mexican grandma? Right. Like, I'm pushing out the tortillas. And they're like, well, I mean, no, we didn't steal it. They're like, you went around and spied on them and like brought it. And they're like, well, no, it's right. They're like, and you're white.
Oh,
like
no,
the white chicks. Yeah. So that was one of my first introductions to cultural appropriation, because it was this big thing. It's like they culturally appropriated. They stole from this other culture. This is not their culture. They're Caucasian. They don't have a right to cook this food. How dare they? They got shut down. They got run out of business. Dunzo. Right, and I'm very excited because I think that we're done with that. Like we go through ages as a culture and a broader society, and like Coach Carter.
Right.
Okay, Coach Carter, who the movie came out in like 2004. I was graduating. He's actually here, I think, like this weekend doing really? Like a talk. Yeah, it's wild.
Wow.
Yeah, it's for a nonprofit. They reached out to me, and I wasn't able to line things up with them, but his big thing was that he, I guess, required that his athletes be in good academic standing, right? And that was a big thing. He had this like state winning basketball team, I believe, and he was like, I don't care if you're the best in the world, like you will be academically proficient or you will not be on this team. And it was a big thing, okay?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Could you imagine if the big story these days was like a high school or college coach requiring people get good grades? Like we have moved past that time where we're concerned about like realistic like, hey, look, you got to get good. Now we're like, is that even a girl? Like,
right.
Like these are crazy things. And we've moved into that. Right. And I feel like we moved away from the original thing Coach Carter was doing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we're moving away from cultural appropriation, where we can sit here and enjoy Buffalo Hump Bar.
Right. Well, and I think there's a difference between like appropriation, where I see videos on like YouTube and TikTok all the time of people calling out, like there's some chick that was like singing, and she's got, she's singing, right,
whatever,
doing the thing, right, and there's like that sort of appropriation where we're wearing garb or we're using a language not necessarily right, and then there's the other type of not appropriation, but the other type of use, right, the honoring the culture, right, the like
you're celebrating, you're celebrating an experience, a culinary,
everybody
loves a nuance, come on, man.
No, absolutely. And I think you should absolutely, if you love birria, go find this cool little hot taco shop, right? But I also want people to be able to sit in their own home and spend a little more and get that kind of primo protein and make a meal that's going to last them for a week. Have you gone out to eat lately? So my wife, my 3 kids, we can't go to McDonald's for less than $50 anymore, right?
Oh yeah. Like I've actually gotten really down on this lately because I have 3 boys, okay, and they're young, and I try to take time with them. So I'll take them out to breakfast. For instance, New Year's Day. I stayed up with my wife and my 13 and 10-year-old all the way till the potato dropped. We go to bed at like 12:30. I was hopped up on caffeine just to get to the finish line, so I didn't fall asleep very easily. So I have trash sleep. But of course, my poor 8-year-old, he went to bed at like 7:30 normal time, right? 7:38. So he wakes up, and everyone, here you go, my guy. He wakes up and everybody still wants to be sleeping, and it's like 6:37 in the morning, and he's usually up at like 6. He's an early riser. And so I'm like, listen, man, this is not his fault. Like, we stayed up and had a good time. Everybody wants to sleep. They're not going to be happy that he's waking up. I'm up. So I get up. I'm like, hey, bud, you want to go to breakfast? And he was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I start driving around, right? Like I first go to Squeeze in Eagle. Turns out it's closed. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll go to like the Griddle, also in Eagle, also closed. And then I'm like, well, maybe Joe Mama's, right? Also closed. And I finally find the Star Country
the
Cafe.
Star Cafe.
It's the best, which I've been there before. I just wasn't planning on driving that far.
It's so good. I remember when I was 9, my grandpa lived out. I think we talked about this before. My grandpa lived out here in Eagle before like all of these
before
houses
it was crazy.
Out here.
Yeah.
And I remember spending summers with my grandpa, and every Sunday we'd go down to the Star and get there like right before church let out, right? So you could get a table. But it's fantastic. And now I don't think I could navigate myself there because my memory is like dirt road, like 3 stop signs, right? And now it's much start. Anyway,
you're like a squirrel that hit a bunch of nuts,
right.
But then they cut down the trees and
they
you can't like,
trees.
You're like, this landscape is not right.
It used to be here.
Right.
I know it was back in my day. These
right.
were all fields.
Right. And so we make it, and I'd taken him there before, but again, I just wasn't planning on going out that far, but they're open. I'm like, oh, God bless America. So there we are at 7:30 in the morning at the Star Cafe. It is all right, I have a very odd desire in life. Did you ever see American Gangster, Denzel Washington?
Yes.
Okay. When Russell Crowe gets onto him as a detective, they're like, he seems like he lives a boring life, but he's really this gangster. And they're recounting what he does with he eats at the same breakfast same restaurant in Harlem every single morning. You see Denzel there, like, with his cup of coffee, and, like eating his eggs, eating his toast. And that has always been my ultimate domestic fantasy, to be an old dude that's loaded, that goes to the same breakfast place every day. And like Cheryl knows me and she brings me my coffee and I don't even have to order because she knows what I order, right? Like that's and so I go there at 7:30 on New Year's Day and there they are. The dudes, they're like a bunch of dudes sitting there by themselves, separate tables, just saddling up for another year, right? I'm like, this is great. And the point is that I still think the Star Cafe has reasonably priced food, but I can't go to most breakfast places anymore. Like the Egg Factory in Nampa, I think the best bang for the buck that I've ever seen. I stumbled onto there by accident with my son. They have this giant chicken out front. And I got this unbelievable breakfast for like $9. And my son, a different son at a different time, got this huge breakfast with like pancakes and stuff for like $8, $9. I'm like, this is the best ever. Because when you go to get an omelet somewhere, you're clocking in now. It's $16 for a 3-egg omelet. It's this big. I'm like, $16. Like, how many dozens of eggs could I get for $16?
Well, I think one right now, but
oh my God. Oh my God, that's a fair point, right. But it would still be a dozen eggs.
Right, exactly. No, and that's exactly it. And that's what I love about, again, not appropriating, but finding these recipes. Culturally, I don't know what the white people recipe is, right? What's the beef stew, right? Swedish meatballs, which I also made for New Year's Eve, also delicious.
Who are the original white people, by the way? Like British people, like Scottish people, Irish,
Germanic, I think.
Okay, so like they have stews and stuff.
The stews and stuff. Have you ever eaten English, like British food?
I mean, like beans and stuff.
Well, yeah, like
I mean, I've never been to London. I was in Ireland for 72 hours for a wedding once. That was it.
Well, even the Irish put a little bit of seasoning in their food.
We drank our calories.
There you go. Yes, yeah, exactly.
Anyway, keep going.
But all cultures, like these recipes are made to feed people, right? Fried rice, Spanish rice,
right?
All of these things, they have a use. Fried rice is day-old rice right. That you didn't eat already, and now we're going to make it into something new. And that is how you stretch a buck. And so for my $50, right? So this hump roast retail price is $12 a pound in our shop, and it was about 4 pounds. So I'm maybe $50-$60 into this roast. And then all of my peppers and ingredients to make this meal, I probably could make it 4 or 5 times with what I got in peppers and chilies. That cost me maybe $10, $12.
Right.
But now I have this meal and this fantastic protein that we're going to eat here. And then tomorrow we could make enchiladas. And the next day we can make burritos. And the next day we can take this into my scrambled eggs. And it will make your eggs so delicious.
So good. I can taste it right now. Yeah. And that's, I agree with you. I think one of the difficult things is, again, we talked about in our first episode with understanding the workflow of different accessible proteins. Because outside of like a steak and a chuck roast, it's like, all right, what am I going to do with beef? It's like, I don't know, a million things, right? And especially when you're looking at like flap steak. I would love to do an episode on flap steak. I don't know if you guys get a lot of requests for that, but that is for me outside of like a ribeye and like, yeah, ribeye's classic, fine. Right. Not a huge filet guy. But the flap steak is by far my favorite piece of beef. And it is this long, grainy, not a flat iron, not a skirt, but like this long, really sinewy, grainy piece of meat that takes marinades really well. I personally just like cracked pepper, rock salt, and olive oil. You burn the hell out of it, both sides, 4 minutes each side on high. And then slice it. It has won every single taco party I've ever brought it to.
This is the same thing with like hanger steak or hanging tender, right? The exact same thing. It's a diaphragmatic muscle. It's got a lot of connective tissue, but it's amazingly tender. That's actually for my wedding reception. We did hanging tender, marinated it, trimmed it up a little bit, and skewered it, and did like kebabs with hanging tender, and knocked it out of the park.
This was for your wedding?
For my wedding reception. So we got married. My wife and I got married during COVID. It was December 22nd of 2020. We got married kind of like COVID had hit, and we paused all of our plans, and you're like, you know what, we're just going to do it. So we literally got married in our living room with like 10 guests and like a video camera to like videotape it. One of our friends officiated, and then that night for the handful, parents and my adoptive parents, right? We made prime rib or something, and it was okay. It was good, right? Whatever. But then the next summer, when everything had kind of like fizzled out a little bit, then we had a barbecue at our house, and that was our reception, and everybody can come over and whatever. And so we did the kebabs for the reception, and it was like a hit, like massive hit. I would do the kebabs again. Any day.
See, that's it, man.
And it is. And it's those cuts of meat, the hanging tender, the flap, the flat iron you mentioned, right? The Denver, those little kind of ancillary cuts that come out of like the chuck, or they're coming out of the neck, or coming off of this kind of different part. They take a little longer to get to them, but you get a little more bang for your buck, and they're delicious. So you're not going to find them on a menu everywhere, right? Flat irons you can get a lot of places. Hanging tenders, not as much. The big factor for that is that you don't get a ton of it off of each animal. You can get one or two, and they're not very big. So like commercially, they're not super viable for a restaurant. But for a consumer, going direct to consumer, you can come in and buy these like really kind of cool cuts of meat and do something fun with them for about the same money that it would take for you to go eat out anywhere else. And you might have leftovers, or you might have an experience, right? You bought this kind of primo meat to recreate that restaurant experience at home. And I personally get so much satisfaction of, oh man, this tastes really good.
Oh,
right? Like,
yeah.
oh, this is fantastic.
This is dynamite. It's dynamite. And again, I think your call to action really is like we have to reinvest and reinvent in our own capacity to make culinary expertise or excellence. Because truthfully, like we're saying, it's literally $16, $17 to get an omelet. So we go out to eat for a breakfast. And again, I try to be a good enough dad. Like I'm a terrible dad, but I try to be a good enough dad. And it's like, we'll go out to breakfast or just a meal, and we're in it just for breakfast, like almost $100.
Right.
And it's like, listen, my wife and I got a cup of coffee. If we're being extra bougie, we'll let our three boys get like hot chocolate, and then I'll split a meal with somebody too. It's like, look, I don't need to fill up here. I got my cup, but you're still in it. Like, even if it's $80, right? Then you got a tip on top. Like you're coming out with tax.
And how many times do you go and do that and spend that money and leave going, meh, it wasn't worth it?
Oh, almost every time.
Almost every time.
Same thing with pizza. So we actually got one of the Uni pizza ovens.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know how you pronounce it.
The fancy one.
Yeah, and we got that, and we have been perfecting these Dude, we should do homemade pizza. We should do homemade pizza with like some like beef or pork on top.
I'm gonna leave some of this with you so you can put it on a pizza.
Listen, anyway. Yeah, and I'm like, I told everybody what we were doing today. They're like, can you bring us some buffalo?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we, like, my wife and I are gluten-free, okay? Yeah. If we're going to get a pizza from, like, okay, first off, if you're going to Zeke's, Zeke has great pizza. But one gluten-free pizza that's a little bit larger than this dinner plate is like $30.
Right.
I'm like, I can't do that. I'm not that important.
Right.
I'm not like, I could crush a whole one. Like, I don't deserve a $30 meal of just pizza. So again, engaging in this where it's like, okay, let's do something that we think is awesome, that we're happy about at the end of the day, that tasted good and was high quality and is going to be like a fourth of the cost. And I think nationally, we are all experiencing this. So there was that big push towards, you know, like the $25 or $30 minimum wage for fast food workers and whatnot in certain states. And just an increased cost of wages. It's like, all right, if Americans are going to want to continue enjoying cool things, we're going to have to make the cool things ourselves.
Right. Not only are we going to have to make the cool things ourselves, but we're going to have to work with that food system and work within that, right? Almost every restaurant that you are going to, you know, especially some of the ones we've mentioned, right? They're buying that food in bulk, right? And then they're turning around and they're selling it and they're trying to make a profit and they're probably hopefully paying their employees fair wages, whatever.
Right.
But then you turn around and look at like McIntyre Farms. I know Brad's been on the podcast, right?
Great, yeah.
Or Hipwell Ranches or Brown's Buffalo Ranch, right? That we're eating locally produced, locally processed stuff. Now, there's always that sticker shock of, man, that's a $40 roast, which is not that much of a sticker shock if you go buy beef in the grocery store.
Bro, let me tell you, 2 omelets.
Oh,
you're going to be right at $40.
So everybody gets that little bit of sticker shock. Like, oh, man, I don't know. But if you take the time to prepare that food and to like make a meal, and like I said, this took me 2.5, 3 hours to make. You can do it in the crock pot. You can start it in the morning, leave, be done by the time you get home, right? You can make it on Sunday and meal prep. But the satisfaction and the value and I'm full and I feel good, and we're supporting local food, local agriculture, the Idaho way of life, right? I think it makes everything taste better, right? Just like camping, the mountain magnifier, right? When you're up on the mountain, everything tastes better. When you eat local, everything tastes better.
Do you think the mountain magnifier is kind of a state of existence, right? Because you're eating oatmeal on a mountain that's the same oatmeal you eat when you're at home and you're warm. And right. But I think the eating local, there is actual precedence for like, well, it traveled a lower distance. It may have better micronutrients. It's fresher. You know, fresher, is probably treated a little bit better, be it protein or produce. Like there's a real, like McIntyre's chickens. You will, my God, my mouth is watering again. And we just ate. Like you will never have a better chicken than McIntyre chicken. It's amazing. My wife has started making this pork. Oh my God. She takes, maybe we should do this one next. She takes the pork, browns it on both sides. And again, these are like pork steaks, which is crazy because I've never seen like pork steaks, and they give pork steaks. She takes the pork steaks, browns them on both sides. Then we cut them up, throw them back in the pan, a lot of garlic. And then she does a cream sauce on top, and she put it on top of, the first time I had it, she put it on top of noodles. I was like, oh, this is different. Was it? Oh my God. Like just so stuck good. It. Yeah. It was almost like a cream-based, goulash, right? Gotcha. Proteins on top of a pasta. It was so dang good. And she's made it since. And like my kids stuff it down, and you will never, like I have never had pork like that. So again, I do think that there's hey, it's cool that we're having this experience, but at the same time it's like, I've never had food like that before. Right. And I have a friend from Brazil, several actually, because I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and they're like, listen, the fruit here is not like the fruit in Brazil. Like the fruit in Brazil, you'll never understand like how it tastes. And I think it's the same thing for locally grown.
It absolutely is. And it's something that we've gotten away as a society, as Americans especially, we've gotten away from eating locally. There's a lot of companies out there that are spending money and investing in those buzzwords, right? I'm scrolling through my TikTok feed and I'm getting Snake River Farms is, hey, this is ranch to table, or Simplot is, we're a real farm to table company, right? But those are big conglomerates, AgriBeef, Simplot, right? That are using this farm to table, direct to consumer, right? They're using all this terminology that you could have been getting already from your local producer at a decent price, because Snake River Farms is upcharging you for that label, for that price, for that name. Right. Whereas somebody like Hat Brand Beef, they're out of Oakley, they aren't getting their meat graded, right? So it's not graded specifically, but it usually airs on the side of high grade. But their product is going to be good, if not as good, or if not better than what you're getting at Albertsons with the Snake River Farms label on it that came from one of, 8,000 feedlots around the tri-state area and then got shipped here and shipped there and right? And it's there and it's local and it's right in our backyard and it's the way of life and it's a family run operation and it's all of these things. He's just not spending the advertising because he doesn't have it, right? The advertising budget on it and the buzzwords, and they're really out there. All these corporations are out there catching onto these little buzzwords like sustainable, which what does that mean?
It's all marketing.
It's all marketing, when really the sustainable thing is buying from a family farm, buying from direct from the farmer, cut out all of the middlemen, right? The distributor, the grocer, the processor, cut out every middle guy in the middle, and then go direct to that farmer, and you put a little more money in his pocket at the end of the day. You get a little better, if not at least the same quality, if not a little bit better quality product that's here and it hasn't traveled and it's in your backyard and it's available and it's delicious and it's like this whole experience of, yes, I am supporting what I believe in. I am sustainably eating food, right? Because it's not being trucked all over the place.
Right.
And it feels good. It tastes good. It feels good. It looks good, right?
It looks
good.
I feel like we're virtue signaling to ourselves.
I know, absolutely.
But it's so good. I'm so on board with you. It's like, I agree. It's the best. Listen, let's eat a little bit more of this. Next meal, what should we cook? We got to do something I had a question while we're on buffalo. Are there buffalo steaks? Like, can you get a ribeye out of a buffalo?
So you can get any steak that you're getting off of beef, you can get off of buffalo. Now, they're going to be a little different, right? So if you kind of conjure an image in your mind, and maybe we'll put one up, of a buffalo, you have that big kind of front end hump with the giant head, and then it tapers down on the backside. So average weight for a young prime bull is going to be somewhere in the 600-pound hanging range, compared to a beef. Those back end side pieces, so your tri-tip, your sirloin, your tender, they're going to be a little smaller. Your ribeyes and stuff, they're going to be pretty comparable. But they're fantastic across the board. The bison is fantastic. It tastes great. It's lean. It yields better. Bison are naturally regenerative. They kind of migrate and they eat naturally the way that
they've been doing for millions of years here.
Right. The things, some of the things that modern farms and modern ranches are doing, concentrated grazing and rotational grazing and stuff, they just naturally go and do that, right? And it's totally available. We have it here locally in the shop. There's 2 or 3 fairly large bison producers within about an hour and a half of where we're sitting right now, that are local focused companies. And price-wise, they're fairly comparable to what you're getting when you go buy a grass-fed Snake River Farms steak or whatever.
Okay, listen. We got to do a bison ribeye. Okay, I'm because I love ribeye.
Right.
New York is fine in a pinch. Get out of here with your filet. But I love the ribeye. To me is it would be fantastic. So next meal, let's do another. Why don't we do a bison series? Let's find 6 different cuts of bison.
Absolutely do a bison series. We can do some tomahawks just because they look cool.
They look so badass.
You can do some short ribs, some plates. We can do all sorts of stuff. The bison is fantastic. Fantastic. It really is a really versatile animal. It's phenomenal meat.
And just healthy. I've heard it's healthier for you all around. Yeah.
For you, especially where you do BJJ and you do kind of all of these things. You're obviously a fit guy, right? being able to eat meat with a little less guilt, right? And get that extra protein boost, get that, better cholesterol. You get those omega-3s, omega-4s.
Well, I just want to be clear. I don't have any guilt when I eat meat, and I don't care about cholesterol at all. So, I had this cholesterol test by accident. It was like 2018, and I had that thing on my finger, and I go to the doctor. I'm like, "Is this like an infected cuticle?" Because like my finger really hurt, and I was like, "What the heck's going on?" He's like, "All right, well, let's do a quick blood test, whatever." And like one of my lymph nodes was angry. He's like, "Well, we'll do a blood test. I'll check your cholesterol too," because I never go to the doctor. I'm like, whatever. So and again, I had a pro fight coming up in like a month. Okay. So I was 182 pounds, 6'2". I could run a marathon. I could keep my heart. When I was in college, I could actually keep my heart well over 200 for an hour straight. So like even at 30 something, it's like I could chew through a tree trunk, right? He gets back. He's like, "Well, you're 260, but with proper diet and exercise, we can drop." I was like, "Get out. Stop. Done. I'm out. I'm done." Out. So I talked to my dad and he's like, "I've always had high cholesterol." And he's like, he actually had a heart check recently. And he's like, "I have arteries like an 18-year-old, like gigantic and crystal clear." I'm like, "Great, man." Like,
That's one thing, like cholesterol, and not to get off on it, but like body temperature is the same thing, where we have this idea of like, this is what it's supposed to be. This is what your your cholesterol, your body temp, whatever. It's been years since I've seen it, so don't quote me on it. But there was a study some years ago that they kind of went and surveyed, like, where did we get that number, that 98.7, and when was it come up with? And what they found was that the like normal body temperature actually is probably a little bit lower.
Interesting.
On average. But that was because when they did all the research and decided this is 98 this is it, was so long ago that people were just generally fighting off infections more. So their bodies were just naturally a little bit warmer because of the era and the health and we didn't wash our hands,
unfiltered water and stuff.
Or unfiltered cigarettes and but do you
remember like in the 50s seeing stuff from we were not there, but like seeing pictures and depictions of people just smoking like chimneys, just golly, man.
We watched what was it, Girl Interrupted. We put that on the other day. We were watching it, and they're like one of the first scenes where she's in the sanatorium or the asylum, and she lights up a cigarette. And I don't remember if it was one of the kids or our older kids or my wife, but they're like, "Oh, you can just smoke there? They just let you smoke?" That? I'm like, it was like the 80s, and the movie's set in like the 60s, 50s. Yeah, right. But I'm like, even in the 80s, like you probably could, right? This was way before we figured out that like that's not good for you. It's like housewives were at home smoking cigarettes, and
do you remember going to like Denny's or something? They're like smoking or non-smoking.
They had the smoking doors. So I used to be a smoker. I'm about 5 years now. I've been nicotine free.
Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great.
I started when I was 16, but I smoked my entire military career, as many do. And I remember, like, I knew which Denny's had the smoking area, which airports, like if I had a connecting flight, like I was flying home or I was flying to a training event, I would specifically pick flights based on, this has a layover in Denver, and in Terminal B, there's a smoking area with a bar, or there's right.
You have it all.
I had it. I knew like my trip. I'm like, this is how I'm going to be able to smoke on this 9-hour flight.
Gosh, man.
And that's all, like a lot of that's not even there anymore.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even Vegas, there's a lot of places that are no smoking in Vegas now. That used to be like the doors open and the smoke billows out and the neon hits you.
Like you could do like first off, I've never engaged with nicotine stuff. I'm not like a good person. I would never. No, it's just like it's never worked its way into my life. Like I didn't have friends that smoked, and I've always been in sports. So like the whole process of smoking, it was like, well, this is not something that I engage with. But like it has gotta be lit. For the number, like the commitment people would make to smoke, like dismantling the smoke detectors in airplanes and stuff, like they would break federal guidelines. Like they like people wouldn't care. Like I'm gonna smoke a sneak a cig. And now I feel like we probably have so many alternate nicotine products. It's like people are still addicted to nicotine at the same rate or greater. They're just like, I've had people in here before. They're like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like they're vaping. I'm like, oh. Yep. I'm like, Oh, sure. Help yourself, I guess. I mean, there's not secondhand smoke from vaping, is there?
Oh, I mean, I think that depends on what they're doing, right?
Oh,
like I remember,
I always turn on the air filter the second I see it. I'm like, oh, cool.
The early days when dudes were like making their own like vape and like doing their own
gel and stuff.
Right. Yeah. Like I know there was a lot of stuff that when it burned and then you exhaled it was like terrible no matter for everybody, like everybody involved. But there's always new nicotine products. Like it is out there, and it is absolutely like there is probably not a day. I don't want to say not a day. There's not a month that goes by in the last 4 years that I haven't been like, you know what I could use right now is a cigarette, right? Like it's
always there,
always right. It's that little bit of a backslide. Drinking like alcohol,
sure,
absolutely a trigger for smoking, which it is like interestingly enough, like there were some studies that found that men who smoked would drink more and they drink higher value drinks, whereas women who smoked would drink less and drink like beers, lower value drinks.
Sure.
So they would always encourage smoking in bars, and that was how they tried to stop some bans in like Oregon and California and stuff. Like, oh no, we need the smoking because that's gonna affect our business so much. Like when people stop smoking. I remember trying to stop one time. I was in Pensacola, Florida, and I tried to stop smoking, and I'd been smoking for like, let's see, 7 years, something like that. And it's very humid in Florida, right? We'd get up in the morning, we'd go run 2 miles for PT, and I remember like going a week without a cigarette and like just dying. Like I couldn't breathe, like my lungs felt like they were full of water and moisture. And it's the rebound from smoking and not like your cilia start working again. And like your body is so used to overproducing this like mucus because you're drying it out with your like all this stuff that like I quit for almost a week. And then it was like, I can't breathe. I can't run a mile. Like I'm going back to smoking
because literally your cilia had been compensating for this damage you were doing. Well, once you stop the damage, it was like they continue to throw mucus at it. Yeah. So then quite literally your lungs were less capable of absorbing oxygen because your body had this imbalance of
and it's not used to like getting rid of that moisture. It's so used to having dryness
and having the moisture sucked out.
Like tobacco, like nicotine actually freezes, like paralyzes the cilia in your throat and in your lungs, like so it doesn't work. So your body produces more mucus or spit or whatever to help move things around because these aren't doing the little
the little hairs.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when your body, it's a rebound. It's like anything, right?
I gotta get back to smoking.
I gotta go back to smoking because I need to pass a PT test this week, right? Like,
oh my God.
It's definitely one of those things where in the midst of that addiction of,
sure.
Right. It's an addiction, but in the midst of that, it's like, man, here's all these really good reasons why I'm not going to quit. And now, the other side of it, having stopped after smoking for like, I think 15, 16 years, I smoked going, oh, wow. Like, I can't believe I made that excuse. I can't believe I did that at the same time going, boy, I wish I could.
Bro, you were like 22. Like you're forgiven as a 22-year-old.
Well, yeah, you're right. I started when I was 16. I was 21 in Florida.
Yeah, right.
And I didn't stop until 2020. It was like maybe 4 or 5 months before we got married, 6 months maybe. And that was one of my wife's, biggest things was, we got together and she wanted me to quit smoking, and we were together for like
girls are always trying to change
2 years.
They're always trying to change. Why can't you accept me?
I don't want you smoking around my kids. Oh, you smell bad all the time. Right.
Well, you smell bad.
It's
not going to get you very
right?
far.
Yeah, right. But it made me a better cook. I definitely, because I over-seasoned everything. You can't taste anything. And
really?
People loved it. Yeah.
Man, I have the only person I know. I don't have, again, being in sports, it's like I don't really have people that smoke cigarettes around me.
Right.
But I do have a buddy who is an engineer for Apple, and he did 2 things in particular. I asked him one day, I was like, "Hey, do you guys use like really good like industrial strength Adderall or something to like keep up?" Because he's an engineer, right? Working in like the optical area. Like he made the camera on the iPhone, or at least part of it, right? And he was like, "No, we have stuff way better than that. It's like, oh. Really? So not only he'd only sleep like 3 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like he was just somewhere else. And he also used nicotine patches. Yeah. Just because they were appetite suppressant and a stimulant. He didn't smoke ever, but he would take like Adderall and nicotine patches and just be like whacked out of his mind.
Yeah. I think I gained like 20 pounds within 2 months of stopping because I was just like shoving everything in my mouth I possibly could that wasn't a cigarette, like mints.
Yeah, sure.
But I remember like guys talking about that in the military too. The guys would do night ops and stuff, and they'd be on. There was like Provigil was a drug that I think was originally designed by the military, but at least was used in those spaces. I used a lot in creative work and engineering work. And Provigil actually is the only drug that had like in some studies had been proven to like increase your ability to do math, and you could stay up for like 3 days, and it's like. I'm like, nah, that doesn't sound good. Like, they're like, oh yeah, no, we used to this, like, and these old like ex-forces guys be like, oh yeah, no, they used to give it to us all the time back in Nam or in Desert Storm, whatever. I'm like, that seems like a bad idea, right? But it's, the 50s housewife thing too, right? Uppers in the morning, downers at night. And
it's wild to think that, I think the whole nature of criticisms of generations past, of like the housewife who's like flipped out, taking like Valium to calm down, all these things. And you think I have always thought of that portrayal as this, older generation that was just dumb. They were just doing whatever. Right. But you look at the way people go through things now, it's like, we're not any different. Like Ozempic is what I was thinking about Ozempic? First off, it's like the number one prescribed medication in the United States right now. It's like to make you lose weight. I get so mad at these things. I'm like, I want there to be a cost, and there's always a cost. It just usually takes like a decade later. I would just like people to admit how badly they want something for nothing. Right. Okay. So like if you take Ozempic, you get like really bad acne. So it's like, you can be skinny, but you're going to have pimples. Right. Like, give me a trade-off just so we can see how badly people want to like cheat the system. Right. It's so terrible. And again, like we do this to our kids, right? Because now instead of having, well, not saying the housewives aren't hopped up on something, but instead of that, now it's like, no, we just medicate the hell out of our kids because we can't handle the kids. It used to be, the kids were crazy and we had to like medicate ourselves. Right. No. I'm taking weight loss stuff. I can't take, we're going to just dumb them down. Like, it's wild that we are constantly trying to figure out a fix. Like it's a fix. Like we need a fix for life. And it's like, wow, man, is this just the state of humanity? Like in contemporary societies, are we always just trying to fit the square peg into a round hole and like using pharmaceuticals to help?
We absolutely, we're always looking for that get rich quick scheme. Push the button and it happens now. Took me less than 3 hours, but most people would look at this recipe and go, oh, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. Like, I got a seed and rinse chili pot. I don't even know where to get those, right? But it's not quick and easy. But if you go to the store right now, and I mean, even when I went and got tortillas, you go to the store and right there's a pre-made microwave plastic pouch of carnitas or whatever.
Right.
Oh, well, $6, I'll buy that. It'll feed, I better buy two. We got 2 kids, right? Right. But it's easy and it's quick and it's great. And it may not taste good and it's been processed to death. And how many chemicals are we putting into our bodies by eating that or, sugary drink or a Rockstar? I am just as guilty, right? I drink 2 a day, haven't ever stopped. But
oh, so you have the Rockstar?
Oh, absolutely. I'm the Rockstar guy. But like, we get all of that, and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh well, I feel bloated, or I'm fat, or I'm like, rather than saying maybe it's the processed food I'm eating, maybe it's right.
If you take an Ozempic, don't change anything else.
I need to take Ozempic. What I think is funny too, I just saw one while we were watching the ball drop. You remember when Viagra came out and there was all the ads on TV like, oh, you can get Viagra without a prescription. We're going to mail it to your house and it's in a prep, right? They're doing that for Ozempic now, right? Like Hers, I think, was the company, right? They've got an ad that's, oh, you can get your GLP-1 online. You just meet online with our pharmacist and we mail it to your door in a discreet package. I'm like, that is literally the same pitch that Viagra had in 2006, 2004. Oh, yeah, you don't have to get it. Well, our doctor will give it to you and we'll mail it to you. Nobody has to know, right? It's like, we're that desperate to get it and that desperate for it to be easy that we're willing to just do a mail order dock in a box to get this product.
I love this. I feel like I'm missing. Listen, I never did heroin. Okay. Right. I've never like smoked meth. Like I've missed all of these wide swaths of better life through chemicals, right? Like I've never tried cocaine. Like what must it be like? And I'm not advocating for this stuff, but it's like, wow, man. And people, I can't tell if it's that I've often thought about this is like, am I different in that I don't have an inclination towards like addictive substances? Am I different, or am I already scratching that itch with these other things that I like? I love working out like crazy, and the negative feedback loop of poor living and trying to work out, it stops me. It's like, okay, I can't have both. I can either stay up and drink and be an idiot all night long every day, and I never get to train jujitsu again, or I get jujitsu, I just can't do this. And it's like, okay, I'll take the jujitsu. And then I have a lower inclination, emotional inclination towards those things because I am back to my normal self after I do jujitsu. I just get that fix, right? And it's so, I'm so taken by the difficulty of life. Like I do have sympathy, an enormous amount, for people that struggle through life and need substances to really help them, because I wonder like, wow, what must be going on? Like the Ozempic thing. It's like, okay, you eat too much or you eat the wrong thing. Why are you doing that? Like what's happening for you that's driving you towards that? And I can understand those situations, right? 100%. Like stress eating is a huge one, right? Just stress in general is a huge thing. And I don't know, I just have sympathy for people.
And I think there's a factor too. There's an economic factor to it too, right? Like, and it's not just, you
mean weight
and anything like that need to get it done now, get it done fast, right? It's, hey, I've got to work long hours, so I don't have time to go to the gym, or I'm not going to make time to go to the gym. And so I'm going to take the quick route out, right? Or, SNAP beneficiaries buy on average more pre-made packaged food than the average American by like 15-20%, something like that. Again, don't quote me on stats because I don't have them in front of me, but generally speaking, if you're on assistance, you are buying more pre-made, prepackaged foods instead of buying fresh and making food, presumably because A, it's easy, it's a quick way out, but also you might be working one job, two jobs, right?
Okay, if I may. And again, this is an interesting question I've had since I was like in my teens, because I would get into arguments with my brother about, he was like, it's cheaper to buy, for instance, McDonald's, right? Like calorie for calorie. And I've always, I remember watching like some food things on like the Discovery Channel back in when I was like in high school, and they would go to the, third world countries and stuff and like they drink the beer that was like the people eat the apple and spit in the pan and or the pot, and they're like, it's like this fermented thing, or some grandma like on the side of the road in like Guatemala with this giant pot of pork, and she's like pulling this stuff out. It's like, all right, hang on a sec. If it's cheaper to eat McDonald's, how come they're alive? Because they don't even have enough money to get McDonald's, right? They're living off of staples. We're talking rice, we're talking beans, we're talking, they buy fresh peppers or they grow their own peppers, and they have these processes by which that was the whole point of like water for chocolate, right? Like there are these mechanisms or ways to engage food that are cheap, that are not expensive. And perhaps they take a little bit of time, but like I make a crazy pinto bean, right? Like and we've had held parties like birthday parties and stuff where like we make a giant thing of beans, giant thing of rice. We do like essentially taco bar, but we make all our stuff. We're out of it for like $40 and we're feeding 30 people, and everybody's coming up to me saying, what did you do to these beans? Like, how did you make these beans? And it's literally, the ingredients are very simple, but it's the timing of things. It's how like temperatures, it's, when you insert the salt, like all these different things. I reject the idea that people who are on a lower wage have to eat unhealthy. I reject, like, if you get a 50-pound bag of rice and a 50-pound bag of beans, you get some eggs, you get some other stuff. It's like you got a lot of base there with just simple stuff.
But see, that's the problem, is that we're not teaching kids how to cook food, right? For generations now.
Sure.
We haven't taught kids how to cook food. When was the last time home ec was a thing in high schools and college? And I know it's still in places, right? Kind of.
I think my son takes like food science at school or something.
Right. Yeah. There's little things, and things like that are making resurgent tech programs, right? Sure. Like trying to get guys into butchery. Right. Hopefully that's happening, right? But we didn't teach people how to do it. And then the easy way was presented. And back when McDonald's and these fast food companies really started like kind of taking over,
right,
was really right around the same time that the beef industry was industrializing very well, like the late 60s, early 70s. Like it had always been very industrialized, but it was like, oh, we figured out fresh transportation. We can kill 10,000 cows and send ribeyes directly to the grocery store. So now the grocery store doesn't have to sell ground beef. So now we have all this ground beef because we killed 10,000 cows and we only sold the ribeyes and the New Yorks. What are we going to do with all this ground beef? Oh, well, McDonald's will take it cheap. We'll sell to McDonald's for cost, right? Because it's driving our high profit value ribeyes, roasts, whatever. And then the rest of it just goes, cheap at cost. And so those fast food companies blew up, and it was cheap. Like, to start, it was cheap. They didn't pay anybody. Right. And now as things have shifted, the reason that we're seeing those prices go up in those restaurants and stuff is because more people are eating there than not, right? They don't need to lure the consumer in with the promise of low prices anymore, because the consumer is stuck. Like, it's like, and we're just as guilty of it in my house of, hey, I really don't want to cook hamburgers tonight because it's like 5:30 and exhausted. We have to go to a PTA meeting at 7, right? Like, but it's that, it's quick and it's convenient and the kids love it because it tastes, whatever.
There are a lot of factors. And let me be clear. So for somebody on like the SNAP program, I am well aware of the prevalence and accessibility of horrendously bad food. Right. Like everything with sugar, everything. Absolutely. Like the worst of the worst. I just also think that, like, when my wife and I did not have a lot of money, it's not like I'm a rich guy, but like when we were really, we are able to eat respectably, and it does take time to make rice and beans, and it may not give you the same type of hit, like dopamine, sugar, fat, salt, whatever. Put enough salt on it, doesn't matter. But like, it's just, again, I'm not saying it's not a problem. What I'm saying is I do not agree that it's a foregone conclusion.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you're saying otherwise. It is a tricky thing. And I think the food system, I mean, everybody's paying attention to the food system now. People are realizing, like, wow, we've really poisoned the hell out of ourselves. This is really not good. We have people that are stressed out. Like, what do you think it does to your health and your stress if you gain like 50 pounds, you can't work out, which means you're limiting your your ability to mentally recuperate, right? Because that's, if I couldn't work out, like, I go bonkers. Like,
right.
Yeah. So like, I get more stressed out mentally. Then I eat worse food. Then I'm more inclined to, have like, oh, it's been a long day. I need a drink. It's like, do you, or do you just need to go to like get drink a quarter gallon of water, go to sleep, wake up to pee a couple times, and then like get up tomorrow and work out first thing? Like, that's probably what you need to do. That's going to make you feel better. But instead you reach for like, a gin and tonic.
Well, and it's New Year's, right? So in the kind of the spirit of the season, that is why people's resolutions don't work, because they do it for 3 weeks or a month, and then spring break came around and I took a week off, and then I just really don't have the motivation to keep doing it anymore, right? Because it's not a lifestyle choice. It's I'm going to do this. I'm determined to do it. Oh, but it got easy to not do it. And that happens everywhere all the time. And if you weren't taught how to cook food, you don't know how to cook food, then I'm not going to cook food. I'm going to go get something that's easy and quick.
Right.
And it's that constant, choice, we intentionally made the choice to not eat out as often, because for a while there, we were eating out 2 or 3 times a week, just because we're working jobs, and I've got, side business. My wife has 2 jobs. And so we're doing all of this stuff. And it's like, well, was it easier? Yeah, sure. But we're always hungry. We always want something, like nothing is satisfying, right? And
Dude,
so
there is something when we go to Disneyland,
right?
There's the only good meal that we get in Disneyland is always at this Mexican cafe place, Mexican grill, and we'll get one half chicken. We'll get like 1 or 2 bean and rice burritos, but then we'll just get a side, several, like 2 or 3 sides of rice, 2 or 3 sides of beans, and like a side of tortillas, and we'll make our own little rice and bean tortillas.
Right.
Bro, there is something so clean about eating rice and beans. I am never happy. Like I don't like, my mouth is watering right now. We're sitting around all this food. I'm just thinking of the rice and beans.
The rice and beans.
Because again, like we'll split up the chicken. It's a half chicken, right? So I'm like giving everybody little bits, but then, there's always rice and beans left, and you're walking around Disneyland like crazy, for days. And I just crushed rice and beans. I'm like, I am back, baby. Like I feel
so
it's
good.
Like the Mexican genes in me are like, bing, bing. It's like spinach for Popeye. Like and it's great. And then of course you get the one treat. You're like, okay, we get the treat. We're going to get a churro, or we're going to get like a candy apple, or we're going to get like something, right? Yeah, whatever. Oh, dude, they have the fudge.
The fudge over Frontierland.
Oh, it's off the hook. And without fail, the exact opposite happens, where I felt great with the rice and beans. Now it's like, oh, I want to die.
Right.
Like the funnel cake.
Carbs and then straight processed sugar.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah. Listen, Elliot, you've been here for a while. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You're the best. I'm really excited for this series. We're going to do the Buffalo series. That's what we're going to call it. The Buffalo series. God bless it. We'll hit it up again next time. We'll space it out a little bit so people have a little time to recover from the Buffalo Hump. And by the way, the Buffalo Hump, this is a unique piece of anatomy to the buffalo, right? Like there's no like cow equivalent of like a fatty hump, right?
Yeah. So the Buffalo Hump is part of the chuck general area, right? But it's that very top piece up there. It comes out a fairly thin, narrow piece, and it is where that big fat store is. You would see it on like Brahma bowls, like the big Indian like bowls,
or scrub bowls. Like scrub bowls that are in the wild, they have that funky bump.
Yeah, you see those water buffalo animals like that are like, again, built for storing nutrients and storing water. Beef cattle don't have it because they don't have to store nutrients or water.
They're like,
they're domestic, right? Yeah,
and my salt lick right there.
I'm gonna stand here until I'm done standing here, right? Like, so they don't have it, so it's pretty unique. What's really great about the hump is it was always like pioneer days. It was that prized piece of meat because it had the most fat and it had the most kind of nutritional value for the pioneers and the natives and all of those. But it has that really good fat cap. It's almost brisket like. And so it makes it, comparatively to the rest of the buffalo that doesn't quite have the same amount of fat as a beef does, this is the one piece is like, man, you got all the fat, you got all the good stuff.
Right.
And you only get maybe 2 of them off of an animal, maybe 3 of them, 4 of them, depending on how big they are. And it tastes good. It's more tender than the rest of the chuck. It's just this really fantastic piece, and you can't buy it anywhere else, right? There's nothing commercially in the United States that we are growing that has a hump, right? Nobody's raising big Indian brown, right?
Yeah.
So it's fairly unique to buffalo in this setting, and it's just the most delicious piece.
This is incredible meat. Just incredible. Thank you for coming in, sir. We'll do it again.
Absolutely. All right. Good to see you.